Okay. So this is Jared again. He just channeled Forrest Gump a little while ago and did a lot of running. So he's going to tell you about his faith story. He's also discerning a religious life. Is that still correct? Okay. And how old are you?
23.
He's 23, guys. About to do some awesome things. So here we go, Jared.
This is so great. I'm so excited to be with you guys, and it just brings back memories of when I was in SASH, being here in Muldowney Hall. I remember during the COVID year, we were in Muldowney Hall, and there was like a limited number of campers, and it was crazy. But I want to start off by asking you guys a kind of like a weird question. I'm going to walk around a little bit. I want to ask you guys, have any of you guys ever like seen a prison in person? Have any of you guys like been up close to like a prison? Okay, a few people. Have you seen like prisoners up close at all? Okay, wow, it's a lot of people. Okay, so the reason I'm asking you that is because a few months ago, for the first time, I saw a prison in person, and I was running by a prison out in California. And as I was going by, you guys know one thing that prisons and elementary schools have in common is that they both have recess. So this prison was on recess. The prisoners were out in the yard, right? And I'm running by, and of course, like prisoners wear orange, so they're out there in their orange suits, and I'm also wearing orange. So I'm running by with a stroller, and I remember making eye contact with one of the prisoners from afar, and I just like waved at him, and he waved back, sort of like a weird situation. And I remember thinking like, this guy, like he's just standing there looking at me. He's like so confused, like what? Number one, why is this guy pushing his stroller? Number two, he's wearing orange, so how do you get out of the prison? So, but it didn't end out well because a few days later, someone called the cops on me because they thought I was an escaped prisoner. But anyways, I'm just telling you this because that was the moment when I realized that I'm in the middle of this journey, and I realized that God was going to be working through this journey. He's going to be teaching me a lot of different things, and so I want to share some of these things with you today. I want to share with you different lessons I've learned just about trust. So when I first started this journey, let me just tell you about it first of all. I just had the inspiration to run across the country to support mothers facing unexpected pregnancies in the Front Royal Pregnancy Center. I know some of you are from Front Royal. I didn't have a car or anything, so I was pushing a stroller. So let me show you like a picture of what it looked like on here. So this is what it looked like when I was starting off, and you can see there's the stroller right there. Looking back to the beginning of this journey, I thought this whole journey was all about the physical aspect. I thought it was about the running, the miles. I thought it was about the physical endurance. But somewhere along the way, I realized that it wasn't about that at all. I did this to support women facing unexpected pregnancies. I wanted to help raise money for the pregnancy center in Front Royal, and I wanted to test my limits to try to do something difficult. But I realized that the whole time it wasn't even about running. I realized after the journey that God was spending it took 114 days, and God was spending this time teaching me. He was teaching me how much I need Him, and how much I need other people, and how much I often rely on myself. When I first started here in this picture, I was super excited. I was nervous. I was excited to leave home, and looking forward to the adventure ahead and new experiences. But looking back, I just realized I had no idea what I was doing. No idea what I was getting myself into. Throughout the 114 days, ran through deserts, rainstorms, ran through small towns, big cities. ran through like heavy winds. And I thought the hardest part was gonna be like the running, right? Like that makes sense. But the hardest part wasn't the running. The hardest part was learning to trust God. Because I put so much confidence in myself and in my own ability that I just wanted to rely on myself. I didn't even realize it in the beginning. There were days that I felt really strong, that I felt like I could just keep going. And there were also days I just felt like completely broken and weak. So I want to tell you guys a great illusion that I had before I started this journey. And I think it's like a really sneaky lie that can kind of like creep into our spiritual lives. And for me, I realized this, I didn't even realize it at the moment, but I really believed in this like big lie. And that is that it's thinking like the spiritual life is like a ladder. I thought holiness was like work like a ladder, right? Where I'm at the bottom of the ladder, God's at the top of the ladder. And basically, to grow closer to God, you just have to climb the ladder. Like the stronger I become, the better I become, the holier I become, the more God will love me, the closer I'll grow to God. It's like imagining you're climbing a ladder to God. And you guys, that's like completely backwards. I want to tell you a quick story. So there was a time when starting off the journey, I was like in the desert kind of near the beginning of the journey. And so I was following along a bicycle route, right? And so sometimes the bicycle route was like on a nice country road that was super safe. And other times it was like on an interstate highway. So don't do what I'm about to tell you or what I did, but just for that. So there's this one time when the bicycle route went on like an interstate highway, right? And interstates are pretty scary if you're on foot. So I was like, I don't want to go on the interstate. So instead I found this road right along the interstate, and it started off like a nice, wide, smooth road, but then eventually it got bumpier and it got more narrow, and it turned into like a sandy, rocky, uneven hiking path. And so I'm pushing this stroller right here on this path, this 80-pound stroller, and it's like tipping over, and I'm getting super frustrated and upset and angry. And eventually, after 15 miles, this like hiking path just comes to a dead end. So I'm like, oh shoot, what am I gonna do now? And so the interstate highway was still there, and there was a barbed wire fence kind of separating me from the highway. So I was like, I'm not turning back. So I gotta hop over the barbed wire fence. So I threw the stroller over the barbed wire fence and jumped over the barbed wire fence and ripped my pants. And don't do this, by the way. And was like running through like glass and broken metal pieces and like pieces of tires and thorns and stuff like that. And it wasn't fun, but after a mile I got off the interstate and I realized I had a flat tire. And so I was like, got off the side of the road, was changing my flat tire. And as I'm like troubleshooting and drinking all my water supply because it's super hot, this random guy, this truck pulls off on the side of the road right where I am. And he gets out and this guy introduces himself and offers to help. And his name was Tim. And Tim shared a little bit about his own story. Tim told me that he had a daughter that recently was murdered. His wife passed away a few months ago. But he was like the most generous man. And he told me he was Christian, and so he prayed over me on the side of the road, helped me change my flat tire, and he even gave me money for the pregnancy center. So this guy that I never even saw him again. And why am I telling you this like stupid story? It's because that sometimes in your spiritual life, you're gonna reach a moment like that. You're you're gonna reach a barbed wire fence. You're gonna get a flat tire in your spiritual life. Where you're on the side of the road and you're having a hard time. You're gonna need like a brother, a sister, a friend, someone to help you. Especially you're gonna need God. You're gonna be stuck eventually. And so I want to tell you just a quick another story about that happened just a few days after that. When I was going through the Arizona desert. Has anyone ever been to the desert in Arizona? Is anyone from the West Coast? Okay, sweet. But you probably know like the desert's pretty dry, obviously. There's no buildings and stuff, and a lot of thorns and rattlesnakes. And so I'm going through the desert, and there's no shoulder. Traffic's flying by. So many cars. I'm afraid because I hear in the distance bombs being detonated. And turns out there was like a military weapons testing site in the desert there. So it's super like kind of on edge and nervous and afraid. And I think what the desert really taught me was that was how little control I have over everything. You know, like I like being in control. I like the feeling of just having everything in control, right? Let me see if I can get a picture of the desert here. But I think, especially out here in the desert, I learned that God was teaching me that I thought I trusted God in the beginning. Like I knew in my head that I needed God. But I realized that slowly over time, day after day, that God was teaching me that I actually trusted in myself. I felt a lot like the Israelites in the desert sometimes, you know, how they're like complaining and groaning. Like I did a lot of complaining and was grumpy a lot. And I realized that it sort of like exposed a lot of my weaknesses, you know. I realized how easily I get upset, easily I get angry, how easily I get impatient. I realized how easily I get physically exhausted. I realized how easily I get lonely, how much I need other people, how much I need God. But the good thing is that that's not the end of the story. That's when I realized something beautiful. And that's that Jesus meets us in our weakness. There's like a verse from Scripture I've been reflecting on from St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians, where he says that my grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness. My grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness. So I was just really reflecting on this verse. Because before the journey, I really thought that my weaknesses were obstacles. They were things that got in the way with my relationship with Jesus. I thought that. Then I realized that my weaknesses, my failures, my shortcomings aren't obstacles. Rather, those are the exact places where we encounter Christ. Those are the meeting place with God. I think a lot of times we have like the misconception that like Jesus just kind of stands outside of our brokenness and like waits for us to figure everything out, waits for us to clean ourselves up, waits for us to be perfect and holy. But I think that's like exactly the opposite. Like it's completely backwards. Because we see in the Gospels that Jesus eats with sinners. Jesus enters Zacchaeus' messy house. Jesus forgives Peter after Peter denies him. Jesus goes to the cross while we're still sinners. The pattern is never that we fix ourselves and become perfect and then Jesus comes. The pattern is always the opposite. First, God comes, then we're changed. And I think we all have, at least I do in myself, different parts inside of me, like rooms that I don't want Jesus to go into, rooms that I'm shameful about, that I'm ashamed of, rooms that I feel like my brokenness, maybe it's my addictions, my failures. But the thing is, those are exactly the rooms that Jesus is knocking on. Those are the rooms that he wants to come into. He doesn't want to come into those places that are perfect and where everything's right. He wants to dwell in those places in us that are most wounded, places that are the weakest, places that are the most broken. He's not asking us to have everything figured out. He's not asking us to have our act completely together. All he's asking us is to trust in him. And when we realize that, then the spiritual life doesn't become so much about us. But if that's true, then what does trust really mean? Because that's the whole point of this talk. Before this journey, my confidence was mainly in Jared, my plans, my determination, my strength, my endurance. But I realized that every day I spent on the road destroyed those ideas that I had about myself. Rain, loneliness, no shoulder to run on, no place to stay, windstorms, feeling discouraged or running through uncertainty. Realized that all my confidence was in myself, and that wasn't a good place to put my confidence in. God was basically just teaching me that our identity isn't built on our performance, isn't built on our accomplishments, it isn't built on how successful we are. Identity is built on being a child of God. Just think about, as an example, think about like when a toddler falls. Is anyone who's in pre-K here? Oh, sweet. Okay, a lot of people. Okay, so if one of your pre-K campers falls down and like scrapes their knee or something, would you get angry at them? Okay. Yeah, so you probably wouldn't like care about them less or love them less if they fall down. It's like a father. When a child falls down, the father's gonna just like smile, pick him up, pat him on the back, encourage him. Father doesn't love him less because he fell down. But the funny thing is that a lot of times we think God is different from that. Why do we think God is different? Trust doesn't mean that I believe that I'll never fall. Trust means that my Father's going to pick me up. Trust doesn't mean that everything's going to go according to plan, that everything's going to work out a certain way. Trust is saying, Jesus, I don't understand why this road is so hard. I don't understand why I keep falling. I don't understand why I'm so lonely. But I know that you're here. See, we have a crucifix right here in Maldani Hall. And I've just been reflecting on what the crucifix means, what the cross tells us. You see, the cross tells us something astonishing. It tells us that God was willing to enter into suffering. God was willing to embrace weakness and failure and humiliation. God was willing to enter into death itself. And ultimately the cross tells us that there's nowhere we can go where God hasn't gone before us. So, what changed after 114 days on the road? Here's another picture. I often imagined in the beginning of the journey, that like Jesus was standing on the other coast and that he was like waiting at the finish line. But then I realized, like looking back, I realized somewhere on the lonely highways, somewhere in the rainstorms, somewhere in the deserts, I realized that he wasn't waiting at the finish line. He was always with me, and he was running alongside me. He's pushing the stroller with me, encouraging me. So, the greatest lesson from this journey is not that I learned how to endure hardship. The greatest lesson is that I learned that I never actually carried the journey by myself. And that's the same for each one of us. In our spiritual lives, in our daily lives. It's true for each one of you guys. Jesus is beside you when you feel lonely, in your deserts, in your rainstorms, on your lonely highways. Jesus is with you, especially in those moments where you just don't feel like you're enough, when you feel like you need to be better, when you feel like you don't have everything figured out. Jesus doesn't wait for us to become holy. Instead, he enters into our weakness. He carries us by his grace, and he teaches us one step at a time to trust in him. That's it for now, but I can tell you guys more stories, or if you guys have any questions, definitely have time for that. I can keep talking, but I'd love to hear it if you guys have any questions or anything.
I heard you put out a fire.
Yeah, there was a time in Arizona where it was like I was running by a parking lot and there was like someone must have like threw a cigarette or something on the parking lot, and there was like a little fire starting. I used some of my water supply to like put out the fire, but it wasn't like a huge fire. But yeah. So.
How far were you running each day, and what was the pace?
I was running 30 miles a day on average, but the thing about the United States is that sometimes you have towns that are like 10 miles apart, sometimes you have towns that are 50 miles apart. So some days were longer than others, and some days were shorter, but on average it was 30 miles. And yeah, it just gives you a lot of time to reflect. And I was doing about like a 12-minute pace during that. So.
What made you decide to go on this journey? And also, do you have any tips for like committing to something like this where it's like going to help you grow in your personal life?
Great question, John. I kept asking myself why I decided to do this. Yeah, well, I was reading books about different people who had done it before, and I had a conversation with someone who did it, and I just figured it was like the perfect moment, you know, like graduating college, you have so much time before you get a job, and I really wanted to like do something that would help me to become a better man, you know, and I think men just like to do hard things sometimes, but yeah, I wanted to do something that would where I could sacrifice for something bigger than myself, something I believed in. Because I think that's like a really important aspect of masculinity is taking responsibility for something and having the integrity and competence to carry it out. And I don't know if I've become that man, but I know that God's shown me where I need to grow. Maybe that's even a greater gift. Well, did you have another question too, or was that it?
That's right.
Okay, gotcha. Sweet. Yeah, so got a lot of interesting stories about like police and stuff. I don't know if you guys ever gotten pulled over. Has anyone gotten pulled over before? A lot of speeders here. Okay. Okay. Well, yeah. Most of the time, it was for different reasons. Sometimes people like one time it happened someone called the cops 3 different times in the span of 24 hours. But sometimes people were just concerned because they thought they saw like a person in orange and they thought it was a prisoner. Sometimes they just wanted to make sure you had like food and water. Sometimes they thought you were like, people thought I was like drunk because I was like drinking as I was running. So some people were like, there's a drunk guy on the side of the road. But yeah, and one lady, so many people kept asking like, is there a baby in there? So people legitimately thought that I was like pushing a baby through the desert sometimes. So they called the cops on that, and so those are the main things.
What made you decide on orange?
Yeah, that's another good one. I thought orange because I had a professor in school at Christian, Dr. McInerney. He'd always says that orange is the color of adventure. So, but I kept having second thoughts on that. Like I was like, why didn't I do like yellow or something? But, so, yeah, that's why orange.
Did you change the color after all these calls?
Someone actually bought me a yellow shirt, so I wore that, and on the back of the shirt it said like, there are no babies in the stroller. So like at the grocery store checkout line, they saved a lot of conversations. Yeah.
I'm sure you met a lot of interesting people along the way. How did seeing Christ in them shape the spiritual journey of the overall thing?
I love that question, Mr. Ricketts. Okay, I want to tell you a story about one person I met. It's probably like the most interesting person I met along the journey. And it was like an unexpected encounter with a hermitess, like a hermit, but like a religious sister version. I didn't even know there were hermitesses in the United States, but so I was going to mass and talking with a priest, and the priest, he brings me to this hermitess. Start talking with this hermitess at her hermitage, and she's like telling me about her story, and she walked across the United States 30 years earlier before she became a hermitess, and she was honestly like probably the holiest person I've ever met. She was just like so peaceful, and she was like joyful. She just encouraged me a lot. And so just like hearing a little bit about her story, she was like a Franciscan religious sister of the Renewal in New York City for 27 years, and then she's like the superior of that order, and then she like discerned how God was calling her to the desert in New Mexico. But just hearing her story, and then she prayed over me, and just such a beautiful prayer that I was like brought to tears, and just meeting her and hearing a little bit about her story, and she just inspired me. Even thinking about it today, I realized like meeting her taught me how it kind of like, I don't know if when you meet a holy person, it's just like it sort of reveals like, man, I'm like pretty prideful, and like I struggle with a lot of stuff. This person's like amazing. So it definitely like taught me like humility in a way, and kind of shaped like the importance of the people along the journey. Like it taught me that life's not about like accomplishments or achievements. Life's about relationships, and so that's one thing that she sort of taught me. No. Yeah. I mean, I think there are a lot more beautiful things to do. Like even if you do like the Camino in Spain, that's like way better, honestly, because you don't have cars whizzing by you most of the time. It's way safer, way more affordable, and you meet other people along the way doing that. So I'd recommend doing like the Camino instead, because that's way better and safer.
What was your favorite part of the whole trip?
Man, favorite part?
And least favorite.
Okay, I'll tell you my least favorite part first. It was in Alabama. Anyone ever been to Alabama? Okay, well, so I was running in Alabama, and sometimes you don't have as much time, like when you're running, to stop at a restaurant and eat something. So I got like a to-go pizza from a gas station, and I was like had it mounted on the top of the stroller. And as I'm running, like this truck whizzes by, and it blows like the whole pizza box onto the ground. The pizza's like face down on the ground, and at that moment I was like, it was like so sad. I realized like in those darkest moments that God's always with you. You know, there were a lot of like funny moments too. Like maybe one of the funniest moments. It's like there was a time I was in a small town in Arizona, and I was like in the only diner in town. And these like I'm sitting next to these two EMS workers, and I can't help but overhear their conversation. They say to one of them says like, "You won't believe it. I saw like the craziest thing the other day. There's this guy in orange, and he was like pushing a stroller on the side of the highway in the middle of nowhere, like." And so I like started talking to him like, "Hey, I know, I'm not that guy, you know." And so we started talking. They were like, "Yeah, like you gotta watch out for yourself, you know. Like some of these towns are so dangerous." There's like one town. It was one town I had already been through, and they were saying like it was so dangerous. There were so many homicides in that town that they actually like enforced a curfew at 8 o'clock. So it's like, well, some things you're just like grateful that, looking back, you just realize like how much God took care of you, and how grateful you are to be taken care of by God and be safe.
How long have you had the idea to like run across the country? Like, when did it like first pop up in your mind? Like, hey, I should try this.
I first heard about it. I don't know if you guys know a guy named Johnny Kublak. You know him? Okay. Yeah, well, he spent some time in this area, and I first heard about like him doing a run about like last, it was like maybe a year and a half ago. He was like in the middle of his run. I heard about it, and I just didn't even realize that people did that sort of thing, you know. And eventually got to meet him and to talk with him, and was reading books about it. Got super interested, and had a friend from school. We did a lot of running together and just pushed each other. And eventually I was like, I thought about it, and I was like, did the Camino in Spain. I was like, wow, maybe that would be kind of cool, you know, doing something like that. But I still hadn't like considered it seriously yet. And then after a few months after graduation, you know, I was discerning with a religious order, and so I was like, well, I have a little bit of extra time, you know, and maybe I should start planning this. And so I spent about like 6 months, I guess it was like 8 months planning and training for it and getting ready.
What religious order do you serve?
It's a contemplative religious community. It's called the Carthusians. So they have like a lot of silence and prayer and time for solitude, and you guys would love it.
How much did you end up raising for the pregnancy center?
We ended up raising like $26,000. So it's really great, you know. Yeah, just moments on the road where you just like, I call my mom and be like, this is going terrible. My pizza just fell on the ground. And she'd like remind me like, remember like why you're doing this. Remember like the people, like the mothers facing unexpected pregnancies at the pregnancy center. Remember like the people you're doing this for and the reason behind it. And so in those moments when you realize like why you're doing something, that it gives you strength to keep moving forward.
How many times did you get sick?
mean, sometimes you have like digestive problems and stuff like that, but that's normal with like American food, pretty much. You know? But honestly, it wasn't bad at all, you know? Sometimes I get like two like large pizzas. But yeah, so.
How many states do you run through?
Oh yeah, so I wish I had a map on the screen, but it was, so it started on the West Coast in California and it finished in Florida. So it's about 8 states so it's California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida.
Isn't that 9?
I think that's it. Did someone count that? 8 or 9, something like that.
What's next?
The next thing right now is, so I've been like discerning the religious life, obviously, and the monastery is actually not in the U.S., so I've been working on getting a visa. So it's in France, so it's a French visa, and so I'll be going over there in September to try it out. And I always tell myself it's like going on like a 3rd date or something, you know. Like we're not getting married; it's more like we're just like seeing where this goes, you know. So that's the next step.
You speak French?
Je parle français.
Ah! So,
Yeah.
completely fun.
Yeah, I've been learning French for the past few months and online and everything. Mrs. Sugar's been helping me out with that.
You said that you're discerning things, like what is something, like what is your process of discernment, if that makes sense? What is something that you do?
Yeah, so I mean, discernment can easily kind of fall into like just thinking about it, you know. Like, but for me, what I did is like, probably a lot of you guys have been to like this discernment camp here called Govades, like in the diocese. Like, how many of you guys been to that? Like, that's just an awesome camp because you're playing like sports and praying with other high schoolers and learning a lot of different things. And so I went to that, and that was like the turning point and everything. That's where I started like reading books about like priesthood and married life and stuff like that, and taking the faith seriously. And for me, it was like, you know, you find a place you're interested in, and you write an email or something to them, or reach out to them, and then usually they'll invite you to like go and visit. And it's kind of like a mutual process of figuring out if it's for you and praying about it.
What college did you go to?
What's that?
What college did you go to?
Oh, college? Okay, I went to Christian College in Front Royal.
Yeah!
I know Faustina goes there too. So. Yeah, I took Dr. Tracy. Wow. Yeah. Dr. Tracy, if you guys don't know, he's like a professor of Christian, he teaches like Latin and Greek, so it's pretty cool.
Two questions. First is, did you have Dr. O'Donnell or
Which Dr. O'Donnell?
something?
I had Dr. Hugh O'Donnell for theology. I liked him, he was really
He's my
good.
uncle, he's scary.
Is he really? Oh man.
And the second one is, est-ce que tu
Il est français. Okay. I could keep answering questions, or I could tell you another story if you'd like.
More stories.
Okay, I don't always know the lesson behind the story, so you guys have to help me out on this one. There was like one time in Texas. Have any of you guys been to West Texas before? Yeah. Like, so when you look out the window, it's like there's like nothing. You know, you're like, I hope I don't run out of gas. And there's one like town I stayed in West Texas, and I like booked this motel right online, and it had good reviews and everything. I'm like, sweet, she gave me a discount. And I pull up to it, and it's like a bunch of like huts. You know, it's not even a motel, it's like these little huts. And they're like different colors, and I found out they're like made out of recycled newspaper. I'm like, what the heck? How is this even like a real motel? But I'm like, okay, this is like the best place I can stay in here in this town. And so the lady, she like shows me to my hut, and inside it's like there's like one bed, and there's like the toilets in one corner, there's like a shower in the other corner, and there's like the weirdest decorations on the walls. It's like skeleton faces on the walls and like dolls, and it was like a Native American kind of spiritual. So I was like, I like woke up in the middle of the night and like laughed. I was like, this is, you know. So if you guys, I don't know the lesson behind that story, but don't put yourself in weird situations.
Don't believe everything you read online.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it was crazy. Like the guest book, people were like, "Oh, this place is amazing and so beautiful," and
The other huts were nice.
it's like,
The only other huts were nice.
yeah,
Yours
it was kind of a sketchy place. But. Guess you guys will have more time at the holy hour today, or I could keep telling stories. Okay. You guys, it was just crazy. There were some moments when, like, one time I was like at a restaurant, and I was like, I just ordered, and I was like ready to pay the bill, and the waitress comes and she says like, that couple that just walked out, you just paid your bill. And it's like all these moments of like, just like strange, like such generous strangers like taking care of you, or like sometimes like a person I never even met before would like pay for the motel room. And you just stay with like families all over the country, like families that just like open up their homes to you and like treat you like family and listen to your stories and like welcome you. There was a time I met like one of my classmates' aunts and uncles at like one of the parishes in Arizona. It's like super random. You guys, one of the things I think from this journey is that I don't know if you guys ever feel like misunderstood, or you feel like no one understands you, like no one really knows you, or like you don't have it, like, you know. But on this journey, sometimes I felt that sometimes, you know, that since people would all assume that I was like a homeless person or that it's like a kidnapper or something, sometimes I felt like misunderstood, you know. And it's important to realize, like in that moment, like I thought about like Jesus went through that same thing, but like way worse, you know. Like he was misunderstood by like his own apostles and disciples, and yeah, just in those moments when you feel like broken and lonely, just remember that like those are the moments Jesus is closest to you. There's another time like I was like running out of water in Louisiana, and I was like rationing this water supply, and super hot, and this motorcycle guy, this stranger, he just drives by, turns around, comes up and hands me a bottle of water. You know, he didn't even say anything. It was like it was like perfect timing. So in those moments you realize that God's like gonna take care of you. God's gonna provide for you when you run out of your own resources. He's just asking you to trust him. And you guys, I don't know if you guys have any like, I don't know if you guys have probably dealt with like difficult campers, but there was one family I stayed with. Sorry, I know these stories are kind of super unrelated, but they're just coming out, you know. We're just going with the flow. But there's one family I stayed with, and this family that took care of foster kids, right? And they had like one pair of twins, and they're named Christian and Christopher. And they looked like completely identical to the extent that the parents couldn't even tell them apart. And these kids, just to give you like an idea of like what they were like the day before I arrived at the house, these kids like tried to set the bathroom on fire. You know, I got there the next day. was like super nervous, like hope they don't set my stuff on fire, you know. But you know, these kids are like, okay, like they're doing pretty good, and it was on a Sunday, so we're like, oh, let's take them to mass. You know, they've never been to mass before. These kids are like 8 years old, and the dad's like we can't take these kids to mass. They're gonna like charge the altar and like attack the priest, and but in the end, we decided to like take these kids to mass, you know, because they'd never been to mass before in this beautiful church. And we're sitting through mass, and I'm sitting next to them, and these kids are like angels, like they're behaving so amazing, and I'm like they're behaving better than I did when I was a kid. Like, it just goes to show that like sometimes we have like these ideas, you know, of like limitations that we put on ourselves or on other people, and like I realized in that moment I can be kind of like judgmental about other people, but that even in those moments, like God can work amazing things.
So what you're saying is we should bring all the pre-K to mass every day. Oh, okay.
Was it difficult to readjust like back when you got back? Like was it difficult to readjust after running for so long, like in the daily life?
Yeah, I wasn't even expecting it because like you don't really have a meal schedule when you're like running across the country. You're just kind of like eating all day constantly, so your body's not used to meal times. So I was like not hungry at all like the week after, and just mentally, you know, like you're used to like seeing new roads every day, new people, new towns, new faces. The brain loves novelty. The brain loves seeing new things, and then you come back home and you're like sitting on the couch and you're like, now what? You know? And like a lot of runners after a journey like that, they get like depressed because they're like, some runners will like kind of put their whole meaning into that run, like the whole meaning of their life, you know? And then they'll be like, you know, now I just feel empty. But for me, it was like just like recovering physically. So far, it's been going well, and just you know, getting used to being with family again. Happy to be with family, but that's the main thing.
Did you do like a weigh-in? Like, do you know if you lost any weight?
I didn't weigh myself before and after. I think I was like, you know, honestly, I think I only lost like a few pounds, like maybe like 5 pounds or something. And that could be kind of dangerous because like if you don't eat enough, you know, you could lose a lot of body mass. All right. Well, if that's no more questions, then
Did you ever have to turn around?
yeah. Sometimes I was like, you guys ever follow like Google Maps walking directions?
Yes.
Sometimes it would like lead me into someone's driveway, into like someone's backyard, and like hit a dead end or take a wrong turn or something. So that's kind of frustrating. Most I had to backtrack was like a few miles, but
What did you keep? Like, how heavy was your gear?
the stroller right here, that was like, I never weighed it, but I think it was probably like 70 pounds, 70 or 80 pounds. Let's see if there's another picture here. So that's the stroller. That's in New Mexico, in the mountains in New Mexico. And sometimes the roads you can see are just like kind of dangerous. So it's like really where it's important to trust in God and to really be on your alert.
How did you take all those pictures?
I take this picture.
Yeah.
I use my phone.
Did you run into any squeakers along the way?
Into what?
Squeakers, like homeless people?
Yeah, there was a time when I met 2 hitchhikers, and the town I ended up in, the only motel in the town was abandoned, and so there was no place to stay, so I camped out, and I met these hitchhikers when I was camping out, and I was kind of cautious at first, but you know, they're a little rough on the edges and everything, but yeah, like went out to pizza together with them and just had like a nice conversation and never saw them again. Some had like tattoos and stuff. But yeah, they seem like, you know, obviously with caution and safety. most useful was definitely like, I mentioned I got like a flat tire, and that happened a bunch of times, especially out west. So probably definitely like my tire changing kit was like the most useful. Either that or like a water bottle, obviously. That's kind of obvious stuff, but
How much water did you drink every day?
I drank between like 1 and 2 gallons, depending on how hot it was. There was like one time in the desert where I drank 3 gallons of water because it was so hot. And I actually came across, this is like this guy walking in the desert without anything, you know? And he's like, "Can I have some of your water?" And I'm like, "Sure." Yeah, so sometimes you just meet random people in the desert.
Are you a better runner now?
I think so. Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of like your body's kind of like recovering, you know, so you can't like overdo it now. But I think definitely got in better shape, and yeah.
Do you have advice for college students or ones that aren't keeping the faith and balancing like school and
That's like a super, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it's difficult. Like how do you balance your time with your, you know, like practicing the faith and like keeping the faith? Because like you guys already probably know this, but like most of the times, like I think this statistically, like most people like lose their faith in college. So that's like a really important time of your life. And I think for me, like if you can like find just like one person, maybe like a friend or something at your school, that can like help inspire you and help keep you accountable, and that you can keep them accountable. It's important to have that person that's gonna call you out on things, you know, like they're gonna check in on you to make sure that you've been praying, to make sure you've been like, gonna call you out on stuff that you shouldn't be doing, you know. So I'd recommend like really finding a friend like that, and it will help you like in your spiritual life. All right, well, that's everything. I think we'll wrap up here and transition to the next activity. I think it's adoration.